Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm David Smith, set decorator, SDSA, and joining me today are Cynthia Sleiter, set decorator, and Suzie Davies, production designer, to talk about the feature film Conclave, which is the wonderful politically charged story about what takes place in the Vatican during the election of a new pope. Welcome to the Set Decor, ladies.
Hey, David. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. So, Cynthia, this is your first time joining us, I think, and it's nice to meet you. But congratulations to both of you on this terrific film. I usually like to start by asking just a couple of quick questions about how you got your start in the industry. Cynthia, how did you become a set decorator? And I see you've done mostly films.
I studied at the Academy of Fine Arts in Rome. And then I went into theater for a short time, and then I started out on filming. That was my first choice. I studied for that, so I'm really happy that I was able to do it. I met some great directors, and I actually started out with Bernardo Bertolucci's Last Emperor.
Wow.
So it was one of the first big films I was on. So that lasted for a couple of years, and then we went to China and then LA with the Oscars. So it was a great experience.
Terrific. And Suzie, refresh my memory as to how you got into the industry.
I basically started as a model maker, helping sweeping floors for a sculptor in the industry, earning some cash to get a grown-up job. And it was like someone opening a door to a world I knew nothing about. So I was a model maker, and then I started assisting art directors. So my route is through the industry, art director on and off camera, and now designing. Yeah. So it's been sort of 20 years of that to get to here. Yeah.
20 years, which went in a flash, I'm sure, for all of us.
Yeah. I know. I used to say 10 years, and now I can't believe it's probably even more than 20 now. But hey, no one's going to know. No one's going to know.
You'll get to the point where they'll be 30 or 40. So,
yeah.
So tell me, how did you both get involved with the film?
So I'd met Edward on a job during lockdown that we prepped in lockdown that never happened. You know, it was that time in 2020 when we were all prepping movies remotely from our computers and doing recce's on Google Maps and what have you. So we'd worked together for about, I don't know, 6-8 weeks for a project that never happened. That went away. And then he reached out regarding this movie in beginning of end of 21, beginning of 2022. And I couldn't turn something like this, you know, cracking script, great director, good cast. And by the way, you're going to live in Rome for 6 months. So that's how I got on board and touched base with Cynthia and her team.
Excellent. And have you two worked together before?
No, this is our first time.
Okay.
It was a great experience. Lovely.
And Cynthia, did you know about the film as early as Suzie did, or did you live in Rome, so obviously for the production it was a really good choice as well to have someone who was local, and also I would just imagine that you didn't have the most money ever to do this movie by any means. Did you know had you heard rumors about this was going to happen?
I had heard rumors. I think it was a project that was was being developed for quite a few years. It took quite a while before this took off. Right. But then the surprise, Suzie called and said, I think somebody informed her that I was in Rome, Sarah Pasquale, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so that was great. So we met, and then it happened.
Yeah.
It's a great great because, there was a build, we got to stay in Cinecittà, and then there was all the locations outside of Rome also. So we had lots to do. It was even kind of tight. We didn't have that much money, like you mentioned. So, we were constantly, yes, checking the budget.
Right. Always. I read in the press notes that the Sistine Chapel had been a set that was in storage and that you refurbished it, correct?
Yeah, so at Cinecittà, the brilliant studios out in Rome, they have a massive backlot with elements of ancient Rome and what have you. And the production company we worked with had all the flattage of a Sistine Chapel hidden at the back of a warehouse. So it obviously made sense. We needed the Sistine Chapel to reuse or reimagine some of that flattage. We slightly altered the design because we wanted more of a Congress governmental feel. And there's a few idiosyncrasies about the Sistine Chapel that makes it more difficult to reimagine our sort of government feel, so that our cardinals could sit opposite each other like these images. Yeah, exactly that. So we reimagined, and it's down to the fantastic craftsmen, men and women at Cinecittà, that managed to put this all back together. If you imagine, most of that is 8x4 sheets of ply, so that all had to be put back together and then more or less repainted completely.
Sure.
The floor, the walls, obviously the plaster work. Some little mice might have had a little chat to some of that plaster. So it was sort of fixing and refurbishing and slightly altering the architecture. But yeah, so we put that together on one of the massive stages at Cinecittà. I think it took us 10 weeks to reimagine that. Obviously, we go up to 10 meters high, and then it's a CG set extension for the rest of it, because even Cinecittà doesn't have a studio big enough for us to put the ceiling in. And then we pushed this set to one side of the studio so that we could build the Casa Santa Marta, sort of wraps itself around in all the available space that was left over in the studio. We built around the corner of this build. So should you walk out the sort of bottom left-hand door there, you walk straight into the Casa Santa Marta corridor, which is quite fun.
So a lot of CGI here. Was this, obviously just incredible craftspeople who could really,
Yeah, I know.
incredible painters. Obviously, your scene painters must have been incredible on
Yeah,
this.
they absolutely were. And it was such a joy to come into the studio because they'd have some cracking tunes on the radio and be blaring out really good music. And there'd be just this army of painters on scissor lifts, up ladders, painting the most extraordinary artwork, obviously, recreating that Sistine Chapel wall. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Was there any great fear in doing this movie about entering a project that you knew absolutely nothing about? Or I don't know, I would assume that you knew very little about how the conclave actually works.
Well, yes, it's very secretive. So it's not that easy to have information of how it actually works and what really goes on. But then we had experts on set and before, consultants and so on. And so digging deep, actually, we got the notion of exactly how things were dealt. So as you see, when they vote, their vote goes into this urn, and then the little papers get sewn together with this red thread. And then this long line of cards gets put into the chimney, into the fireplace, the stove, and that burns. So they can't reuse the same cards. It's a whole process just to make sure that the voting is correct and that nobody is cheating. This is the process, and it wasn't that easy to find out how it actually worked.
Right. Well, and I noticed what great paper you were using and terrific script and calligraphy. It was really terrific to see all the technical details.
As much as we found all what really happens, in a real conclave, this is obviously a storytelling, cinematic, dramatic piece. So there are elements of the conclave that we didn't know, like the behind the scenes. What does a Casa Santa Marta look like? What does other elements of the process that they have go through. So that was when we were able to take artistic license and slightly build on the sort of thriller-esque type vibe of this movie. And even in this room here, because it's one of the traditions they have, is they put a beige carpet down on the floor to deaden the sound so that no one could overhear what they're saying. And we decided not to go with that, and we went with this red carpet, which then elevates the whole piece and builds with the drama and the thriller aspect. So the color red starts to really work and is a thread all the way through the movie, right to the Room of Tears, which we painted red as well, just to have that lifeline. You know, red is the color of life. It's the color of blood. It's, you know, it's like, also I felt like a womb at the end. It's very feminine. And I think the whole story, the arc of the story, to end up in a more red, in this red Room of Tears, is a beautiful way to hold our characters at the end. So although we did our research about the reality and the truth, we also gave our spin because it is a dramatic piece.
And because there is so much red, and there's so much red velvet going on, which came first? Did the costume designer choose the color of the vestments, and
Yeah.
then you worked within that?
Yeah, so that was one of the most important things. Lizzie Crystal, the amazing costume designer, basically reimagined all those cassocks and robes that the cardinals wear with much richer fabric, much better fabric for film. So we absolutely responded to her reds. The cardinals had to be the center of the story.
Sure.
They had to stand out. We have to know their importance. That's why red, again, is such a powerful color. They're the important people. So we see them within all these environments. That red is just such a beautiful thread, and that's on Lizzie, that choice. And we sort of bounced off her colors basically to try and find complementary red. You know, there's lots of movies like Cries and Whispers and what have you, where you play with red on red on red, and it's just something really rich and, you know, deep and sincere about it. And we wanted to try and, yeah, steal a bit of that.
And at least here, there's always a color called cardinal red.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there were variations of cardinal red as you went. But it all flows together really nicely. Obviously, you knew what you were doing, but it had to be fairly difficult to come up with all those different textures that would work and to make happen. Cynthia,
Yes.
I was intrigued immediately by the tablecloths and wondered, well, I walked away from the movie knowing that I was going to speak to you, both of you, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's miles of red velvet and miles of black and white scenic marble. But so where did you come up with all the fabric for the tablecloths, and who did them?
My Alfredo Fiacchi, he's a great drapesman. And we sampled the red carpet, also with a test with Stefan, the director, everybody. We came in with the different reds, and we made sure that we picked the right color that would suit the costumes and the lighting, everything. So there was a research behind. And then, we just went on ordering miles.
How long were these tables? Are they 7 meters?
No, they're longer than that. So
yeah, it might even be 10 meters, because
yes,
Sistine Chapel is 49,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yes.
49 meters, yeah.
And did you ever have to have them so that they would split, so that
We had them, yes, they could
do,
split,
yeah.
and they were also on wheels.
right?
So, to have them so the cardinals could get out, and then we had to stop the wheels at the top of the little platform there because we were scared they were going to fall off. But yes, it was tight for them. It was like 80 centimeters per cardinal. Some were fat, some were thinner. So, there's a lot of cardinals, like 120. Pairs and everything. Everything had to be the same.
Sure. Were the tables actually upholstered as opposed to being a slip-on tablecloth?
No, it was a slip-on tablecloth.
It must have been really a great fit because I didn't see any ripples, and
Yeah.
also it just hung so very nicely, and the pleating was sensational. Really, really.
Yes, yes. I went for a wider pleat, and then I thought it would be cleaner, and I didn't like originally they have like a little tablecloth, like the little white tablecloth on top, a short one,
Right.
which I thought was miserable, and so we went with this long runner instead, which I thought would be cleaner and more beautiful. The golden runner that's on top. Mm.
Right, exactly. As a set decorator, I understand how difficult it is to get something to be that pristine and to maintain it while they're shooting, you know,
Yes. Well,
because it can be fine in the morning, and by the time you see the dailies the next day, it's like, you know,
yeah,
how did that tablecloth end up like that? Anyway,
we had great onset presses. So they were also, they had a little steam iron for the tablecloths in the morning, and everything would be perfect.
right.
And they also had a stencil, didn't they? Because obviously we do the explosion in this scene, and
Yes.
obviously everything gets covered and whatever. And it was like an army of prop guys and set dressers. So we do the explosion. I think we did it 4 times, and they would walk in with hoovers and vacuum cleaners and these stencils that they'd set down. So book, pen, hat, Bible, book, pen, hat, Bible. So they were all regular, and we just like swooped in and swooped out, and we went again. It was one of the quickest resets. It was fabulous to see. It was like, yeah, amazing.
So you did the explosion 4 times?
Yeah,
Yes.
Wow.
yeah.
Okay, and over how many days?
One day.
One
One
day?
day.
One
One
day?
day. Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Honestly, Edward is so prepped. The director is so prepped. Every scene there was a shot list, and particularly for those we had storyboards as well. So that had been planned for ages, that particular scene. But
And we had rehearsed it also on the
yeah,
other.
we'd rehearsed it on another stage to see how vast, how big the pyrotechnics need to be, and what actors, you know, where we had to have stuntmen and where we could have actors for real. And so it was prepped. So yeah, all we had to do was how fast could you clean up? You know,
Wow.
simple in, out. So yeah, 4 times. It was extraordinary.
How difficult was it for you, Suzie, as a production designer to be, you know, to have a set with very few windows anyway, and then to actually have those windows blocked out at some point through most of the movie?
Yeah.
How difficult was that, and how did you deal with it as far as the gaffer goes?
Yeah, so it's absolutely a couple of things. It's about collaboration with the DOP and the lighting department. So, for instance, in the Casa Santa Marta that we built, we've got windbag ceilings, and we used this particular fabric that could allow a little bit of ambient light through it. Do you remember we tested the different fabrics, didn't we, with Stefan? Because all he has is those fluorescent lights in the corridor. And the
Right.
beauty also about Cynthia is that Cynthia knows everything there is to know about practical light. So we had lots of lights. She had this whole office full of different lights that we could choose for each character. So yeah, you can see it's very obvious there that the ceiling is a windbag. When we're filming, it works so perfectly. There's a little gentle ambient light coming from the ceiling. Obviously, our fluorescent lights have been adapted by the Sparks department, and Stefan absolutely uses all these beautiful practicals that Cynthia has dressed in the set as well. So it's all about collaboration, as is every movie, but this particularly for the lighting.
So
Yes.
the long hallway in black and white marble,
Yeah.
that was a set, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was on the same stage as the Sistine Chapel?
The system was just to the side of it. Yeah.
To the side of it. And then what did you do? Did you build then like 2 rooms, one on either side, and then keep changing those for interior?
Yeah, because of the nature of where we could build it, I wanted the longest corridor. So we built the length of the studio, and then I had a small area at the bottom of the Sistine Chapel where we sort of were able to turn left, and it has a selection of flattage. It was a bit like an Escher drawing. So every day on the schedule, it would be Tedesco's apartment. So we'd reconfigure the flattage. So we had probably about 6 or 7 flats that moved in and out to sort of like elongate or stretch the rooms out. So they all were different configurations. I think we had 8 different configurations, from the Pope, Tedesco, Lawrence, each character had their own configuration. And it was just, again, military position with a great team who were able to manipulate the sets so smoothly, so that at the beginning of every day, we'd maybe change the bed linen, change a bit of the dressing, and off we'd go. Yeah.
And Cynthia, you must have had like 5 beds standing by.
Yes, yes.
Today it's this bed and that bed and that bed. The beds are all wonderful. By the way, I thought that they were all terrific. They they didn't look like a matching hotel by any means, and they all had great character.
Good.
That was the idea, in fact, to make it more like a guest house, not really a hotel. It's a guest house. Everything is kind of the same, but not really. And they were all matching except for the headrests. They were all different colors, different color blankets. By the way, one of the bathrooms was on wheels, so we could wheel it out fast.
Yeah.
And then regarding the lighting, we also drilled holes in the blinds to get those little spots of light to come through.
Yeah.
So
well, that was going to be one of my questions, because in the movie, as the shutters come down to block out sound and the paranoia, obviously, of all that, was that in camera? Was it real, or was it CGI?
A bit of both, really. Yeah, the ones here were real, and that's a couple of prop men pulling up and down on a rope to drop these ones in.
Yes.
But also what's great is they end up looking a bit like prison bars, because a conclave is about being locked in. So we wanted it all to feel a bit like a posh prison, you know, a bit of a tomb and a bit underground, so slightly sinister. So this is a really lovely subconscious feel of bars in the window. And then there's another beat in the reception of the Casa Santa Marta, when we have the big shutters come down on the windows there. That's in camera with a little bit of assistance, I think, with the lighting of that, because that's such an expanse. But yeah, majority of those we installed on a special motor to have the shutters turn, which is quite a number. Yeah.
And were these all hard flats? And which came first? Did the flats come? They had to paint this in place, or paint it in segments put together?
Painted in segments. So I worked out there are 200 1 meter by 1.75 meter bits of marble on this set. So our graphics team, basically, we vibed off. There's a brilliant bit of architecture in the business district of Rome called the Euro. Is that how you pronounce it, Cynthia?
EUR.
Yeah, EUR. And it's a lovely sort of brutalist, fascist type building, you know, gorgeous architecture, built of lovely marble and terrazine. So we took some images of the marble there, and then our graphics team then made up our own bespoke images. And I think we made 7 patterns that we then printed. We went through a bit of a rigmarole to decide what sort of fabric that should go on. So it's basically MDF with printed Fablon that's then stuck onto these walls that then the chippies put together. So it was that route, basically. So we've got 7 patterns that change enough for you not to see the repeat, I think. And then the floor is hand painted by, again, the brilliant painters, and they hand painted and glazed, painted and glazed, painted and glazed. So we get this high gloss sheen. And the whole thing just feels cold and airless, and all you can hear, we wanted the feeling that the air had been sucked out, and you can just hear the air conditioning maybe going and the hum of the fluorescent lights. It's sort of very echoey. Yeah.
And you mentioned the brutalist architecture. I thought that was a really great choice. And I also felt that it did indeed make it feel more like a controlled prison, you know, and a very high-end prison, or, you know, I mean, because they're definitely locked in, and there's all secrecy. But I love the little square windows.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah.
That repetitive motif going throughout.
And that comes from a brilliant Italian architect called Carlo Scarpa, who is, we absolutely, I was inspired by. He does doors and windows with little squares. And I think just putting those three in, and with the bright red again, you know, the red doors, off we go. Yeah.
I've been to Rome twice, not in many years though. I know that there is some of the fascist and brutalist architecture still there. Is there some of this in Vatican City as well? Or is that just a creative liberty on your part?
Yeah, I think creative liberty. We were very lucky to, weren't we, to go to the Vatican and I had a tourist trawl around the Sistine Chapel, and we went backwards. So we were able to see certain aspects before the tourists had got there, sort of thing. And I remember our tour guide saying, and sort of pointing over a courtyard saying, that's the Casa Santa Marta. And it looked like quite a dull building, really, not something that would have some sort of intrigue or espionage going on. And that's, I think, when, you know, we all got together and thought, well, let's make it a little bit more filmic and a little bit more dynamic. Yeah.
Well,
Yes, it's a modern building. It was built in 1995 and it has nothing interesting. Mm.
well, this movie is very detail oriented, and I just wanted to point out again how well I thought that was done by the whole team, obviously. I mean, we all know that it's a very big collaborative effort, you know,
Exactly.
and working from an incredible, or with an incredible visionary who, you know, has such great ideas, you can't possibly, you know, do anything but execute them, you know. So is there anything on this movie that frightened both of you? Or each of you at a different time and thought, oh my gosh, never be able to make this happen?
Well, maybe the first day of shooting, shall I say that?
Go for it.
Okay, we started out on a big set, and that was the Caserta, which is the Reggia di Caserta, which is huge. I mean, it's big, and it's the biggest royal palace in the world. So it's enormous. And we decided to do the first day shoot there. And so maybe that could have been a little bit.
And tell me what this building is and where it's at in the movie.
So it's the south of Naples. And it was commissioned in 1775, something like that, to imitate Versailles, but it's even bigger and more glamorous. And in the movie is those enormous staircases when they run up the staircase.
Ah. And then in the movie, there's this incredible long colonnade with all of these pillars that just line up, and it looks like it's nothing but pillars. What building is that?
So that's in EUR. It's one of those fascist buildings. We had to clean up and put in some benches, which
the benches were amazing, weren't they? The benches were great. Amazing.
You can't really see them, but they were great. So,
yeah.
And we copied some benches that were quite particular.
And you were very confident throughout the whole thing, Suzie, right?
I guess the biggest thing for me, I'm British, and I was working with these lovely Italians. So my Italian isn't brilliant, but I got to know good sign language, Italian sign language at the end. I guess like any job, it's about finding that sweet spot between ambition and time and budget. You know, that's often one of the biggest things and the most dullest really to talk about is how do we
make it happen.
Yeah, between those sort of three boundaries. But sometimes the boundaries force your design, and I think on this, you know, we own things like we could only afford one stage at Cinecittà, therefore we had to design the Casa Santa Marta in a certain way, but that helped, I think, inform how the whole piece was filmed, and also the fact that Edward was so graphic in his framing, so all those details on a big screen look amazing, you know, a cardinal on a phone or smoking a vape, or all those modern elements to this, what could be a very traditional story. I think bringing the contemporary aspect to the film was really interesting. So that hasn't really answered your question, but yeah.
No. But I'm going to steal a quote from you. You know, the sweet spot between ambition and what was it? Ambition and
budget, time and budget. Yeah.
Yeah, budget, time, and yes. Yeah, and ambition.
Yeah.
And Cynthia, Suzie started out by saying that she was going to spend 6 months in Rome. How much prep time did you get? And I'm sure that Suzie didn't get 6 months of prep. So.
I wish. Yeah.
Oh, no, we got a fairly decent prep. how long was the prep? But like 3 months.
3 months, yeah, I'd say. Yeah.
But
3 or 4
fairly decent prep, and actually it helped to shoot on location because they were building. I mean, we got the prep, but the prep to build the Sistine wasn't that much. So
Yeah.
that was they were kind of running to get the stage ready to go in. That's why we started out shooting on location before going on stage.
And how many days did you shoot?
8 weeks, I think, wasn't it? What's that?
Yes, 8 weeks.
So it wasn't lavish, but it wasn't tight either. I mean, it wasn't horribly tight. So
It wasn't
Again-
horribly tight. No,
No.
it was okay.
Pretty
it
good.
wasn't 25
And I think
days.
again, yeah, because Edward is so prepped with his shot list, and Stefan and him knew exactly what they were going to do every day, that it went pretty smoothly, I think. Yeah.
Yes. And then, of course, once you have the shot list, it doesn't really always happen that way. But
Right.
at least you know where
Yeah.
you're going.
It's nice to work on something that with really good people, really good actors, and a really well-written script.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they really set a tone, didn't they? Because they were all grown-ups in this movie, you know, and Rafe and all of the cast were so professional. Like there wasn't there was no drama queens there at all. Everyone was, it just felt like there was an acting department, an art department, a camera department, a director's, you know, we're all on the same page, all aiming for the same end product. And those actors just brought their A game. They really did, you know, just absolutely blew it out of the water. Sometimes when we're making movies, when you're watching a scene happen, it can be a bit like performance art, a bit like theatre for the crew, because you're in this environment watching it. And I think there were many times on this, particularly in the Sistine Chapel, when we had all those cardinals, 120 cardinals, and the cast all in there. It was a really amazing experience and a really lovely vibe on set. Yeah.
And the thing is that for the most part, I would say you also had to have almost all of those people there all the time. You know, for a good 2/3 of the movie, you had the entire cast. It seems.
Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate this, ladies. Thank you very much for talking,
Thank you.
and
That was
congratulations. And hopefully we'll see you in LA at some point for maybe this gets nominated. So
Maybe.
worthwhile. Yeah.
We hope.
Thank you, David. Lovely to chat with you.
Thank you,
Nice
David.
chatting
Thank
with you.
you.
Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.